by dropping off a hot meal and saying a quick hello. So, America, let's do lunch. Volunteer your lunch break at americaletsdolunch.org.
This message brought to you by Meals on Wheels America and the Ad Council.
People been saying to your friend, get a different face, and posting on their feed, they're super ugly. The things they say to them online are cruel and they're not true. So tell your friend, I'll stand up for you. Don't worry, I know what to do.
Know someone being bullied online? You can be a witness and make a difference by letting the world know it isn't cool and by letting your friend know you care. Learn more at eyewitnessbullying.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
The Storks are bringing me a baby brother. We can do this together.
All right, let's go.
Storks know how to keep kids safe. Do you?
What?
Oh my gosh, you don't know.
I know.
You don't. Oh man, you laugh when you're uncomfortable.
No.
Making sure your child is in the right car seat is one of the steps to safer travel.
I will rock this.
You will rock this.
To know for sure that your child is in the right car seat for their age and size, visit safercar.gov/the-right-seat.
Cool. Very cool.
Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
It's important to plan ahead for emergencies, like the storm. When it kicked in, we had a plan. We were able to get in touch with each other in no time.
Idea how to find each other.
The whole experience was fine.
the most frightening 10 hours of my life.
If there's one piece of advice I'd offer other moms out there, it's to stay calm and keep to the plan.
Message.
Some parents plan ahead, some don't. Make sure you know where to find your family in an emergency. Start your plan at ready.gov. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Wherever we go, we about to bring on the positive vibe. Wherever we go, we are gonna do what makes us feel right.
Good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Hello. Welcome to the Soul Purpose Show. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm your host, Keith.
And I am Monica.
And this is my lovely co-host, Monica.
Yes.
And this is the Soul Purpose Show, seen here every Saturday on In Touch News Internet Radio, heard all around the world.
All around. And
Facebook Live and YouTube, and hopefully you are telling your friends about us. We are so glad to be back still in the middle of October, which is homecoming month.
It is.
So if you've been following us, you've been following the show, then what you know is that we decided to dedicate this month to HBCU homecoming because, and here's the history. So every year about this time, HBCUs, if you're not familiar, usually we'll have scheduled homecomings, and leading up to homecoming, what generally happens is you go and you buy all your gear, you get your overpriced hotel room, and everybody just kind of converges and has a wonderful, wonderful time. And this year, because of COVID, obviously some of our homecomings, I think all of our homecomings were probably canceled, but not canceled, because what did we decide to do, baby?
Well, because I was having fear of missing out,
walking around
not even
crying.
I don't know if I was crying, but I was really bothered because I missed homecoming last year. Like I had bought my hotel room last year, had my outfits laid out.
All of that.
Had bought my party
all
tickets.
Of the outfits.
Had bought my party
breakfast
tickets.
Outfit, the middle of the day outfit.
You've said this 3 times now.
The going to lunch outfit. The going to the yard outfit.
Are you done? I had the game outfit though.
Going to the game outfit.
Anyway,
and then the after game outfit.
So last year I couldn't go to homecoming because I literally had everything prepped. I mean, my sister was going, he was staying home. It was about to be a girls' weekend, baby. And then I had trial. The judge didn't give me a continuance, so I had to stay home. I was really, I cried. I think I legitimately cried. So anyway, so I was looking forward to this homecoming, bought my hotel early, and then the Rona hit. And so we couldn't do anything. And so I said, well, all of us have a fear of missing out because we're not going to be on campus and we have to socially distance. So let's see if we can do like an HC 2020 challenge with the goal of encouraging alumni from every institution to get back to university, because fundamentally when we go back to homecoming, we're kicking it with our friends. We're seeing our old, folks, if you're in a sorority fraternity, meeting up with your chapter brothers and sisters, but we are still giving back. The goal was to try to encourage our alumni, even in the midst of this pandemic, to still support our university. So
every little bit helps. And so if hotels aren't full and if the vendors are not being able to kind of, pitch their wares, if you will, then at the very, very least, we want to give listeners opportunity and our viewers an opportunity to contribute to your school or contribute to other schools. Obviously, we would prefer that you contribute to FAMU, but that would be selfish of us. And so what we've done is we've started to invite some other HBCU representatives to come onto our show and tell us about their schools. Last week we had Spelman represented,
Alabama State
represented,
and then 2 Rattlers.
Yeah.
And then maybe people are afraid to come on our show because it's, we strong Rattler supporters, because most of the people that signed up were like Rattlers. But the Jackson State University folks, they were like, we are not afraid. Yep. And so it is a JSU takeover on the Sole Purpose show. Gentlemen, and I'm the only woman.
And you're the only beautiful lady joining this group of distinguished men. My fraternity brothers are on, but we're gonna follow protocol. We want to be good hosts, and we want to allow Brother Neely to introduce himself first. Brother Neely, how are you, sir? Tell us a little bit about who you are. Unmute yourself and tell us who you are.
Hey, man, how y'all making it today?
Outstanding.
It is outstanding to be here amongst my fellow HBCU alums. Shout out to FAMU for putting this together. And, we can officially welcome you guys to the SWAC. And this will be perhaps the last positive exchange of pleasantries in that welcome. Because we handed out L's. We got plenty with y'all name on them in every sport that y'all would be participating in.
Let's go. Let's get it. Well, no, we said this though. We said this is what we were going to do.
Neely came in swinging hard. That's okay.
Absolutely.
That's good.
I haven't even thrown a punch yet. That was just.
That was a jab.
Not at all. That's light work.
My name is Neely. I'm a Jackson State grad, marketing major. Born and raised right here in Jackson, Mississippi. And did I mention that Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, is our head coach?
Yeah, we know.
My introduction. Yeah. Did I mention that we have 4 Hall of Famers?
Yeah.
So anyway, Charles Bishop. Charles, introduce yourself to our viewers before the show gets unplugged.
No doubt about it. Thank you for inviting me on. I'm Charles Bishop. I'm a 1996 graduate of Jackson State University, and this is what I do. I have co-host a weekly HBCU sports talk show, Houston, Texas. Dr. Cavil's inside the HBCU Sports Lab, which is every Tuesday from 6 to 7 p.m. And then I also co-host the Tiger Talk with 1400 Club, a Jackson State athletics podcast, where we take a look from previous generations to the current generations, any and everything that is Jackson State athletics. So if it's Jackson State athletics or if it's HBCU athletics, I'm on top of it.
Awesome.
Yeah, we're certainly going to get into the big announcement that you guys made here within the past week or so, and also talk about the game. Let you guys give us a preview of next year's big game down in Miami as well. But I would be remiss if I did not bring in my homie, my roadie, my frat. We go back. Actually, we go back a ways now. And when I met him, he carried himself with such dignity and distinction that I thought maybe he went to FAMU. But wow. But brother Bradford, tell our listeners and our viewers who you are, sir.
Before I introduce myself, let me take a sip of my drink, if you will. I am Matthew Bradford, originally from Laurel, Mississippi, of course, graduate of the Jackson State University, 95 graduate. I am currently an IT executive with the 6th largest school district in the country. And I would not in the least bit be where I am without God, my family, and the Jackson State University, right? And so having these 2 young men on with us today, we go back years and years. And I'll tell you this, if I'm running for anything from a public sector perspective, these 2, I got to get blessings from them first because they know too much about where the bodies are buried. So at the end of the day, I love these brothers, and we gonna rock to the casket drop. So at the end of the day, bro, it's JSU to the end, and you could not have two better people to represent the university on the day. So I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. So thank you all so much for joining us. We're gonna jump right in. One of the reasons why we did this is because we all know about how important HBCUs are in our country, just period. I mean, HBCU grads are everywhere, right? But there still is this, even though we know how successful we are, even though we know how brilliant we are, there's still this pushback from other folks that question the validity and the significance and the relevancy of HBCU. So I guess the first question I have is for each of you all. When you all were graduating from high school and were headed to college, were HBCUs automatically on your list, or how did you all make the decision to go to an HBCU, and more specifically Jackson State? Neely?
Yeah, I think that, again, being born and raised here in Jackson, Jackson State and HBCUs in general, for that matter, at the forefront of your mind. You have Alcorn State University here, you have Mississippi Valley State University here. And so there's some natural synergy. But I think one of the things you find in HBCU-dom is the generational transferring of it. My parents went to Jackson State. Okay. And my mother's first job was at Jackson State. And because when you go back to those 60s and 70s, we were the institutions that had to first honor our own degrees. So our degree awarding turned around and created job opportunities in that professional standpoint, and was really the pathway and the gateway to middle class and socioeconomics. So you just grow up in that environment of having an admiration for that safe space. And as you progress through history, being a late 80s graduate of high school, I had the opportunity from just a racial standpoint to attend any college I wanted to. Maybe not so much from a financial standpoint or scholarship, but just from the acceptance and being able to apply, those barriers were removed. But just as it was then, and now it's returning, or has never gone anywhere, we still need those safe spaces that HBCUs provide. And whereas, higher education is a business, and it has a business model and therefore a customer base, it's still a family. When you go to a HBCU, you're going to have professors that care about you. You're going to have classmates and friends that care about you. And here we are. I'm sure your lovely wife, Keith Monica, just graduated a couple of years ago. But for the four of us who graduated about 25 to 30 years ago, we're still going back. And you don't see that in other institutions. And so that was something I was exposed to as a child. That was something I was exposed to growing up in Jackson. And I just had a natural pathway to choose an HBCU. Can I tell you this, Keith?
Sure.
You want me to rock your world?
Absolutely.
I had choices. I almost went to FAMU. You're hearing that here today. Yeah.
I have to appreciate that transparency. Matthew, don't do it. Don't do that. I have to.
No, Matt, this is a true story. It's a long way from Jackson to Tallahassee. And my parents were like, no, you can't go that far without, reliable transportation and being that far on your own. And, I just clearly made the right choice, in choosing 1400 Lynch Street. But my college choices came down to Jackson State and FAMU.
Awesome.
Wow. That's actually good to know. Charles, was it the same with you? Did you want to go to FAMU, but instead had to decide?
Wow. It's funny. It's funny Neely said that, because I was a school of business person, so I was very well aware of what FAMU's school of business. So FAMU was definitely within the mix. But much like Neely mentioned, I'm a Jackson State baby. My parents met at Jackson State. My dad worked at Jackson State. He was on the athletic dorm there at the time. And, I always joke in terms of being a Jackson State baby. I know the score of 1972 Jackson State Alcorn game, and I'm born 9 months later in August. So it's all I ever knew. I'm that kid who grew up basically going to every Jackson State game, living in the stadium pretty much with, I don't care if it was football, basketball, baseball. Jackson State was all I knew. You know, and some kids, they grow up in terms of looking at Alabama, looking at these other FBS type schools, but Jackson State, HBCUs, I grew up in, and it was a very different sort of paradigm for me, because I would look at people talking about other schools and I'm like, yeah, it's not Jackson State. So that very much was my existence growing up. So I definitely, you know, Jackson State was pretty much where I was going to be going, and it's pretty much what my parents told me where I was going to go to.
Matt, same question.
You know, it's funny because, you know, my parents didn't graduate from college. They didn't go to a four-year institution. So I have a connection to Jackson State because my an older aunt, a great aunt, graduated from Jackson State College, if you will, before it became a university. She became a head nurse at the local hospital. And from an education perspective, of course, my family pushed it, but she pushed it more than anybody. And, you know, I had great grades in high school. I was in band as well. And so I was one of the top 2 drummers in the state for extended period of time, my junior and senior year of high school. And I was recruited to come to Jackson State just like a football player would be for the band. But I had the grades as well. And so I could have gone to, you know, I had a scholarship offer to USC because I was a computer-aided graphic and design major. They have a great architectural college in California, but their partial scholarship they offered me would have paid for all 4 years at Jackson State. Mississippi State as well. They had a strong architectural program there, and I got offers from quite a few schools. FAMU was one of them, but their program wasn't as strong as the one I was looking at. Of course, Jackson State. Not you know, no shade, just the truth. But at the end of the day, you know, Jackson State. When I went on a recruitment trip, we went to high school day one year. It was a wrap. I mean, the family atmosphere, the fact that the honors college individual over the honors college at the time she was an amazing individual. She would literally call me on my part-time job. I'm flipping burgers, and she would call me on my part-time job to see how I was before I even got to Jackson State. So that type of care, there was no way possible I could go anywhere else, right? Yeah. The best choice I ever made from a university perspective.
So Neely, you actually, that's a great story. You actually kind of alluded to that caring, the atmosphere of caring that you see on an HBCU campus. Talk to us a little bit about what happened. What did Jackson State do to you while you were there to help prepare you for prepare you for life after college?
And you get prepared for everything at Jackson State. Like even now going into these elections, I'm not worried about how long the lines are because I've been in long lines. You know, if you had to register at the athletic and assembly center, the computer go down, you know, you just learn life skill sets, man. And there is not, you know, and in HBCUs, we treat our dorms, you know, like we do our hoods, man. I rep Stewart Hall. Like that was, you know, you just learn these interpersonal dynamics and how to get along. And, you know, as Charles mentioned and talked about FAMU School of Business and Jackson State School of Business, you know, we're truly all in this together. We go back and forth and we throw jabs, but it's really just that rising tide lifting all boats. But more than a degree from an HBCU, I think what you get are those relationships. Do not get me wrong. I got my first job opportunity because of my degree, but I got my career path because of my relationships. Yeah. And these are relationships I still have 20, 25, 30 years later with people that we can call on each other in personal times or in professional times and aid and assist each other. And it all started at 1400 Lynch Street, you know, and sometimes I go back and I speak to freshman classes as they're coming in and getting settled for orientation. And, you know, you never know who you're going to be or who the person next to you is going to be. You know, you look at Oprah at Tennessee State, you know, at some point she had a roommate. Yeah. You know, at some point she sat next to somebody at the cafeteria, you know, and so you build these relationships with people and you take them the rest of your day. And I think that's the biggest thing that I got from my HBCU experience, particularly at Jackson State, is whether it's friendships, my fraternity, Kappa Alpha Psi, that that you just build these long lifetime bonds with people that are going to be a constant resource that you can't even calculate the depth that it's going to bring to you.
Yeah, I have a question. So my parents went to predominantly white institutions. My mom graduated from University of South Florida. They met at University of Chat, but everybody else in my family has gone to an HBCU. And one of the things my parents were proponents of going to HBCU for sure, but the money just wasn't there. But still, you see a lot of parents when I'm out recruiting. I've said this on previous shows. When I'm out recruiting and trying to encourage young people, specifically A&M, but if it's not A&M, just an HBCU period, you still get these pushbacks from parents and sometimes even school administrators that attempt to discourage students from going to an HBCU because we have this party type mindset, and they talk about the academic rigor or the lack of academic rigor at HBCUs. And so, Matt, kind of give us your perspective on how do you dispel, or have you heard that false characterization? And if you have, how, when you're trying to recruit a student to come to JSU, do you dispel that mischaracterization about HBCU educational value?
So, we of course we hear that all the time, of course, when it comes to African-American schools, HBCUs, of course, and fraternities and sororities. They think that that's all we want to do is party and all that type of stuff. But the three of us were in the honors program, right, at Jackson State. And the rigors of the honors program were ridiculous. So yeah, we had fun. Yeah, we hung out at the plaza, we did what we do. But at the end of the day, if you stayed in that program, you had to be on point. There were no exceptions, there were no excuses, none of that whatsoever. And when I tell people about our honors program, I'm excited about it because to Neely's point, you were sitting in class next to valedictorians of their high schools, salutatorians as well, right? I graduated in the top 10% of my class, but I was just I was no different than anybody else in the room, right? And so I tell people all the time, we had the talent, we had the skill set from a teaching perspective, but just look at the product. And I'm not even talking about athletically. Look at the product in business. Look at the product in all these career fields that come from HBCUs. And it didn't come from them because we were just partying, right? So the educational values are definitely there. I just tell people, look at the output and look at when you start digging into people that you feel that are industry leaders, I guarantee you they have a tie to an HBCU at some point.
Charles, what was the differentiator for you, bro?
I'm gonna follow up on Matt's point because I've met some of the most brilliant people ever at Jackson State, especially in the honors college. I mean, literally brilliant minds, and that kind of blew me away. You hear all the it's a party school. You hear all the misconceptions, but the people that you were around really forced you to go to the library. I mean, force you to spend that time in your books because it was so many brilliant minds. And I think that was the thing that from freshman year forward really blew me away in terms of the network of people that you were around, especially touching on what Neely was talking about. You were around some very just tremendous minds who were constantly philosophizing about, or just, adding their touch to whatever the issue of the day was, and it would really blow you away. So I was constantly just in awe of a lot of the people that I was around at Jackson State. Matthew talked about Dr. Harvey, who was over the Honors College at the time, and rest in peace, Dr. Harvey. You just don't come across those sorts of personalities. And Matt and I, we laugh about it all the time. We thought we were doing really good freshman year, and she would call us into the office and just go in.
Give us the business, right?
Give us the business. And it's like, but Dr. Harvey, I got all B's. I got a 3.0. No. You might as well drop out now. That was Dr. Harvey sort of something to get you going, and it would push you over the top, push you over the edge, and it was that sort of care that I can't replace. I mean, it was that sort of and it wasn't just her; it was other people like that all throughout the college.
Yeah.
So Chuck and Matt, I got to throw this at you guys for some clarity, because Matt talked about the rigors of the honors college, and Matt even talked about going to the boom. So Monica and Keith, let me do a deeper dive in some of the truth for that for me. One thing that Jackson State will teach you as it relates to those rigors, not only what you are, it'll teach you what you ain't.
Oh, that's facts.
So let me tell you what I ain't. I ain't in no honors college. After that first semester or the half of it, I told Dr. Harvey what she could do with that honors college.
Hey,
but now it didn't stop there. Now I was a music person too, you know, and I had the music major opportunity, but I took the academic scholarship. And the reason I did is when I left Jim Hill High School band and I had my alto saxophone, my tenor sax, because I could play both instruments, even though they're different keys. And I went to the FD Music Hall and I heard Ezra and Andre Delano, you know, who are professional musicians touring the world with Babyface and others playing.
Oh, yeah.
I put my little horn up and went back to Stewart Hall. I knew the boom wasn't for me. You know, so that's just another life lesson that even just the reality, hey, you know, Monica, somebody got to represent the C students. Somebody got to be the voice.
It's funny that you say that, because I was in the business program at FAM, and I remember my junior year, I was taking managerial accounting. I like math. I'm not a math person. I was my emphasis was marketing. So I remember being in the class, and I think the Professor Sykes was her name. So everybody's gone. She called. It was right before ad drop. She called people down. It was my name and a couple of other people's names. And I knew I was struggling in the class, but she calls like 5 of us around. Everybody had left. She said, ad drop ends on Friday. I strongly suggest you drop my class. I was like, you don't have to tell me twice. I'm not messing up my GPA.
No doubt.
So I appreciate, so to your point, Neely, and all of y'all point, you got professors that really care about you and they recognize that you have to be better. Average is not acceptable. You got to be the best. I'm not going to. I'm not going to feed. I don't want to assist you in and not living up to your full potential. So when she told me to drop that class, I was like, you do not have to tell me twice. I went down.
There's absolute love in the truth.
Mm-hmm.
So someone telling me, you know, it's one thing for someone to tell Bishop, you know, that he can do better. And there's another thing, someone tell me this ain't for you.
Yeah.
You know, both of them are done in love. And it adds to the productivity of the outcome. You know, my college experience would have been much different had I stayed in an honors college struggling, or had I stayed in a boom that just wasn't for me. So just that atmosphere of safe spaces where people can have that honesty to say, hey, look, man, I don't know if your gift is accounting. Maybe your gift is marketing. So I moved to marketing and look at me now. You know, and that doesn't happen on some other educational track where people don't have your long-term best interest in mind.
Yeah.
So you know, I'll add to that. Neely, you're correct. I give you 2 words that changed my life at Jackson State my freshman year: academic probation.
Hello.
So the boom wasn't for me long term. The you know, all the extracurriculars, because my parents, who did not go to college, sent me to school to get that degree, or as they would put it, to get some learning, right? And so it didn't take me one semester to be on academic probation before I got it together, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they play no games as far as that goes, and I truly appreciate it, because we had professors that would tell us that you had to be twice as good as anybody that didn't look like you just to be on the same playing field, or even lower than them, as far as opportunities. And so they pushed you. They pushed you more than you wanted to be pushed. At times you would hate them, but at the end of the day, you're looking at 3 professional men that wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Jackson State. And so I'm blessed.
Very much so. Yeah.
So we're heading into a break, but did you have a question?
No, I was just going to take us into the break by sharing a couple things. One is, I know when we come out of the break, Brother Matt, I keep want to call you Brother Bradford. Matthew, we are brothers. We are fraternity brothers. He's gonna have to leave us because he's got other alpha business to take care of, which is certainly understandable. But brother, I cannot thank you enough for taking some time out of your busy Saturday just to come in and fellowship with us, and we appreciate you. I'm going to give you an opportunity before we go into break. Now, when we come out of the break, it's going to be on, because we're going to be talking about athletics and traditions and those kind of things. But Matthew, take us into the break with some words of wisdom that you would leave for a young person that is watching now, 2 FAMUans and 3 outstanding graduates of Jackson State. Make your pitch for why they should consider Jackson State.
First of all, I definitely appreciate the opportunity to be on today. And Neely and Chuck, man, love y'all, bros. Appreciate y'all for being here as well. I'll tell anybody, I mentor kids a lot. And the first thing that they talk about, they want to be athletes, entertainers, because they want that fast money, quick money, what they see on television. And then they want to know how much money you make, right? If we can't be athletes and entertainers, what do you do and how much money you make? But I tell people all the time, the education that you get at HBCUs is unlike any that you could ever get anywhere else. You can go to a larger school and get a degree that looks a little different on paper, but you can't get the entire experience. You can't necessarily get the love and nurturing that you're going to get in HBCU. As opposed to just being an ID number or student ID, you are a person that someone's going to love and care about from the time you step on that campus until you graduate, and then for years to come. These experiences I have with these 2 young men have spanned 25 plus years, right? And they're gonna extend until we leave this world. And so I'm more than thankful for the opportunity. So if you want to get a quality education in a family environment and enjoy every minute of the time you're at that university, go to an HBCU.
Amen.
We appreciate you, man. We're gonna go in a break. When we come out of break, we're gonna be talking about sports. Hello.
We'll be back.
Love y'all, bros.
All right, take care.
No doubt.
Wherever we go, we are gonna do what makes us feel right.
By now, we're all aware of the dangers of COVID-19. Like others with existing health issues, cancer patients are at a high risk due to their compromised condition. If you are newly diagnosed with cancer, your care likely can't wait. Moffitt Cancer Center is the best place for your cancer concerns and to provide guidance to help you plan your next steps. We're here for you. Call 1-888-456-2839 or go to moffitt.org/here-for-you.
Hello, Kubo. What have you got planned for today?
Come on, this way.
Adventure can be found anywhere, but the best place to start is in the forest.
It's the most powerful magic there is.
Head outside to discover incredible animals.
Wow.
And beautiful plants that come together to create an unforgettable adventure. So grab your loved ones and explore a world of possibilities. Visit discovertheforest.org to find the closest forest or park to you. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the U.S. Forest Service.
My teacher said that we should have a plan in case of an emergency. Do we have one?
First thing I'm going to do is grab a flashlight with dead batteries.
I'm going to start randomly throwing clothes in the bag. You two will be hiding in the closet and Dad won't be able to find you.
And that's when we both start crying.
Uncontrollably. Can you pass the cutlets?
Winging it is not an emergency plan. Make sure your kids know what to do during an emergency. Who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Search Ready Kids at nyc.gov or call 311. Brought to you by the New York City Office of Emergency Management and the Ad Council.
We're playing your favorite old school. Today's R&B. With a smooth touch of jazz. You're listening to In Touch Radio.
Wherever we go, we about to bring on the positive vibe. Wherever we go, we are gonna do what makes us feel right.
All right. We are back from break. It's the first half. Am I still talking over music? I think I'm still talking over music. Okay, so it's weird because sometimes I talk over music, sometimes I don't. So anyway, but so we're back. If you missed the first half of the show, we were joined by 3 Jackson State University alum. Had a phenomenal conversation. They came hard. We're going to talk some trash in a minute, but something that Neely said in our first half sparked my desire to ask this question. So we talked about the election without kind of getting into political conversations, and we can if you want, but we don't have to. But you talked about long lines and why, as a HBCU grad, you're not concerned about the long lines because we all know if you had to register or get financial aid, you were standing in line for 3 hours. But the question that I have is HBCU students and grads historically have been heavily involved in the civil rights movement, heavily involved in politics, in the fight for racial justice in this country. And in this time of the pandemic, we've seen George Floyd. We were talking Black Lives Matter before, but in this pandemic, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery. And what I've seen amongst HBCU alum is there's a different, not to saying that all that doesn't impact Black folks as a whole, but there's a different response from, I think, HBCU grads, maybe because of the things that we had to deal with when we were on campus. We were in the same city as a predominantly white institution. So we were protesting. I protested several times when I was on A&M's campus. How do you think that as an HBCU grad that influences how you're perceiving the things that are going on, or your response to the things that are going on? And I like, either one of you all want to touch that subject, if that question makes sense.
It makes total sense. I think there's a direct correlation. I think it becomes ingrained in who you are as a person and in your outlook. We're all the sum of our experiences. And your HBCU experience will forever shape, how you interact and how you engage the world. And from a Jackson State University perspective, the long list of names that you mentioned there, Monica, it's a even deeper story for us. We had a student killed on our campus by law enforcement. And this year's the 50th anniversary of that. And you think how many people that are involved in your life that touched you that are still alive.
Yeah.
So this was 1970 on the campus, in our plaza. The Gibbs Green Plaza is named after the two students that were killed. One was a student at Jim Hill High School and was just walking home. And the other was Philip Gibbs, was a student at Jackson State. And 50 years ago, they were killed by law enforcement. No one was charged. No one was convicted. And it left.
Oh, no. Did it freeze out?
Uh-oh. I can follow up on probably where Neely was going, Monica, in terms of in terms of it being ingrained.
Yeah.
Jackson itself is a civil rights city, and to have an HBCU in a city that's essentially was one of the epicenters of the civil rights movement. You take a look at Jackson, Mississippi, and Birmingham, Alabama. Medgar Evers was killed in Jackson, Mississippi. So a lot of that ingrained sort of way that you look at the world was really born out of Jackson, and a lot of the educators, especially who taught you along the way. You grew up with this sort of reverence for an HBCU, a reverence for Jackson State. So a lot of the way you kind of look at and kind of shape the world is through those lenses. So I'm really appreciative. Matt was talking earlier about, are you talking about this kind of that HBCU experience? But I had school counselors who their reverence for Jackson State, Alcorn, Mississippi Valley, Tennessee State, Spelman, Morehouse, it was unbelievable. So I never had that person, kind of in my ear, like, well, why would you want to go there when you can go here? The reverence, especially from the educational community, Jackson Public Schools, was so high for Jackson State that they really, it was such a benefit to me in terms of it not being torn down, or the HBCU experience being torn down.
Yeah.
So one of the things I'm just curious to get your perspective on, because obviously we're biased, right? So we are HBCU grads. And I do want to jump into more, kind of personalized FAMU, JSU, the rivalry, which is no doubt getting ready to really just kind of jump off. But it brought to mind a question over choices for young kids, right? We're going to probably encourage our child, our children, our child to go to an HBCU, but we also know that some kids are going to have the credentials and the offer to go to MIT and study engineering, to go to Stanford Business School, to go to on and on and on, to go to Wharton Business School. So how do you differentiate when you're giving solid, sage advice to a kid about HBCU versus a PWI? So just interested in getting your perspective on
You know, and it's funny. I take a look at my own experience, and it was my professors in the School of Business at Jackson State who almost put a ridiculous amount of arrogance in me in terms of you can go compete with whomever.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of took that arrogance into, and I hate to say the word arrogance, but I took that ridiculous amount of confidence into all the interviews with companies that I did as I was, getting ready to graduate. It was just a situation where you can compete with the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School of Business. You can compete with University of Mississippi State. And in a lot of ways, I took so much of that confidence around with me that it really didn't bother me who I was interviewing with. I so appreciated the dean of the School of Business, who was president of Tennessee State now, Glenda Glover at the time, in terms of the way that the faculty just put an insane amount of confidence in you. So, that's my perspective. My perspective was always, I can compete with whomever. So it just, your title or where you're from, it never entered the frame.
Interesting. It's funny that you say that, because when I was in law school, I remember I was in the business program, and there was a guy that was in my class that went to a PWI, was in the business program too, and we were just kind of sitting, a bunch of mixed, diverse group of students. We was only 2 Black people and a bunch of other white folks talking, and then we're talking about A&M, and he's talking about his university, and he was putting down our university in terms of kind of, his internships, and he talked about he internshiped at a particular corporation on a local level. And I said, oh, that's interesting. I interned at such and such corporation in this corporate office in New York City. And so you saw that. So in terms of being able to compete with anybody, there's an arrogance that comes along. I think it's a healthy arrogance, because you're going to have those people that push back and try to question the validity of your degree. And in my mind, I'm thinking, dude, we're at the same place.
Right.
We're both here on University of Florida campus. So anyway.
Neely, welcome back. I'm going to let you jump back in here and give us and pivot a little bit to, since we're talking about choices and the choices the kids have of PWIs versus HBCUs, this recent trend is blue chip athletes, right? That are making the choice to go to an HBCU. We've been saying it now for a few decades, that some of you cats need to consider coming back to to these HBCUs and helping to build these programs, because you're going to get certain advantages, on and on and on and on and on. So I'm curious to get your take, Neely, on why you think this trend is happening, and where do you think it's going to go?
Well, I think that it's going to go continue to be an upward trend. This is, let's rewind some. This was at some point about opportunity. And when you have an opportunity to achieve a goal, it's hard to discredit someone making that choice for that path. But now we live in a world of social media, a world of quick access to data, a world of everything can go around the world in a matter of seconds. That even before this social injustice summer, or before this trend, as you said, Keith, that started about 10 or 15, 20 years ago, and you can see some momentum building. If you can run a 4.240, I don't care where you're running it. They're going to find you. If you run for 400 yards and pass for 6, they're going to find you. And so now, just from being able to control our own image and information, it just makes sense to go back to our safe spaces, because that opportunity is there. Well, the next level is the social unrest, the political upheaval. And now when you have coaches and facility upgrades, as this playing field becomes more and more level, now more than ever, the opportunity has returned to where it was in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, where we were producing Hall of Famers that later on had to go to PWI schools because those games were on TV. Keith, we were talking before we went to the break, and as we mentioned, Deion Sanders now being the coach of Jackson State University, and what that's going to mean for Jackson State University, but what it also means for our other HBCUs. More than ever, JSU games are going to be on TV. So guess who else gets to be on TV? Our opponent. Whoever we're playing against that day, is going to also be on ESPN. And so now when you have an Auburn who's going after a kid that was going to Alabama, he says, well, we play Alabama. And so you'll get that opportunity. If they don't want you, we'll take you. Well, now our games are going to be on TV. Right. And now we're going to have facility upgrades. And now we're going to have this standard of excelling in coaching and combined with the rigors of our academic programs that we discussed earlier. I think that you're going to see a trend that's going to continue for years to come. I don't think this is just a knee-jerk reaction to just this summer. I think that these young people now have been exposed. They have role models to back in our parents in our younger days when you had the Jim Browns and the Muhammad Alis who were out there in the forefront. I think now more than ever that there's an 11th grader somewhere that 10 years ago would have been thinking about Alabama, and he is clearly thinking about FAMU or Jackson State because he wants to play in that Labor Day Miami, and he knows he can go to the NFL or go into sports management or be an attorney for sports law. He knows those opportunities exist. So I think more than anything, it is a reattachment back to the opportunities that our institutions provided athletically. You're going to see that come back around. And I think that more and more kids, 4 stars, 5 stars, are going to choose HBCUs. And Chuck and I know they're going to choose Jackson State, but as our scholarships and our allotments run out, we'll be sure to refer them to FAMU. But we're going to take the better ones, though.
Neely, I will follow up on your point there, but and in terms of not just the kids, but I think the Renaissance part is the parent. The parent starting to kind of look at the HBCUs, and that's an important distinction because parents tend to live through their kids, and they want to see them playing the 2:30 CBS SEC game and things and that sort of stuff kind of rolls around in their heads. But now that safe space component that you mentioned, why send your child to a space that isn't as safe as what he would be at a HBCU? So I think the wheels are starting to turn now, even more so for parents in terms of not wanting to willingly place their child in harm's way.
Well,
Chuck, let me drill a little deeper on that, Chuck, and because I mentioned safe spaces and I appreciate you touching on that. So let's look at Jackson State. Let's look at 1400 Lynch Street. And this is one of those things, Keith and Monica. This is not a shade thing because this model exists in other HBCU communities. But here in Jackson, you have an African American mayor. Mm-hmm. You have a chief that's Black. You have a majority Black police department. You have the Hinds County Sheriff is Black with a majority Black Sheriff's Department. So when you want to operate in a safe space, if you got to send your kid off somewhere and you want to believe they're going to be in good hands, you're just in a better situation in this environment. And it's not likely to change anytime soon in America, where if you're being managed by people who have your cultural and your best interest and understanding in mind, that you're not dealing with people who are panicked at your presence, but understand that a young person with music blasting doesn't mean they're a criminal, and you don't administer justice on the side of the road. Well, in an environment like Jackson, Mississippi, home of Jackson State University, is just a safe space for you to come get an education, and you can leave the campus with some reasonable belief that, when these blue lights, if these blue lights come on behind me, there's just a super majority chance it's going to be an officer that looks like me. I can communicate with. Versus if you're in some other community at a PWI, and when you're not on that football field, they don't see you as that superstar. You're that Black kid that's up to something. And so I just firmly believe that safe spaces and comfort zones matter. And if you can get that and an education and an opportunity, why not come back home?
Yeah. I do have a question though, because my brother played D1 ball. And I remember when him and my cousins were playing, in terms of recruitment, he wasn't recruited. He'll tell you, I think, that he wasn't really, he was recruited by Michigan and Nebraska and Maryland, ended up going to Kent State because of an injury he sustained his junior year, but he wasn't recruited by an HBCU. And I know that I have a cousin now whose son is a phenomenal baseball player. And I know Alcorn State has a phenomenal baseball team. My cousin's on the played baseball for Alcorn State just recently. But my cousin's complaint and challenge is that he wants his son to go to an HBCU, but they're not doing the recruiting that these PWIs are doing.
Even smaller.
Even smaller schools are recruiting. His son's 13, but there's no recruitment. Me and Keith get text messages all the time because we're saying, Deuce will do phenomenally at HBCU. And he's like, well, how do I get in touch with them? Because I want them to go, but they're not recruiting. So how do you, from a parent, I think Charles said this about parents and getting the parents engaged and involved. If the parents want their child to go, I didn't play sports. I love sports. I didn't play. There's a recruitment space on the school's part that has to happen. How do you bridge that gap?
So one of the reasons that gap exists, it mirrors other aspects of our life. We will leave our areas, our inner cities, and we'll go to the suburbs and we'll say things like, oh man, I wish our streets were this smooth, or I wish our schools were this good. Well, those streets are that smooth because you're out there shopping, and they use those tax dollars from your shopping to pave their streets. So at some point, when you want services from your home, you have to invest in your home, and recruiting costs. And Monica, I'm not making an excuse because we can do a better job, but we have to realize that recruiting has a budget. Yeah. And if HBCUs are underfunded from the state, and if HBCUs are under contributed to from our alums and our supporter bases, we're going to have challenges paying for rental cars, paying for flights, paying for coaches and hotel stays, paying travel costs to go out and recruit. These other institutions they don't love you anymore. Right. They just bigger budget, to do the process. And it's the same thing when you shop outside of your interest. When you go spend money outside of your town, your community, you're only building theirs up. Mm. And they don't want you to live there. It's not like they love you anymore, but you're funding your competition. We have to learn to, yes, be critical from a constructive standpoint of our shortcomings, but we also have to understand the investment it takes to level that playing field. Yeah. And so how do we flatten that curve? Like you said, Monica, relationships. I don't have to have a coach travel somewhere and I know this kid, I know his family. I can augment that lack of recruiting budget. I can connect those dots. Twitter's a wonderful place. It doesn't cost anything, and so we're going to get there, but you're exactly right. There have been some, if you want, at some point, now I don't want to get in y'all business. Y'all look very happily married. But at some point, Keith saw what he wanted and he had to ask for it to come here. And so that model will never change in recruitment. When you want something, you have to go after it. But I guarantee you this, Monica wasn't coming, Keith, if she was going to have to pay for lunch.
You're right about that. Now that's the true truth. So that is the truth.
You got to go after it, but it has to be funded too.
Yeah.
So coaches and these staffs that they want to go after these players, but y'all as HBCU grads, we've got to give back to our institutions if we truly want to level and achieve on this playing field.
Say it one more time. Say it one more time.
So listen, Neely is talking about that bottom line, that dollar. All right, and we know that the coach, the Deion Sanders signing. He's a celebrity, but let's talk about the financial impact of what that means for. Of not just Jackson State, other HBCUs, and most importantly, the game next year on Labor Day down in Miami. Talk to us about what's going to happen.
Well, I'm looking forward to this reiteration of the Orange Blossom Classic. In a lot of ways, Jackson State and Florida A&M, they have such a history, and I know Florida A&M alums. They look at that Southern game because of the times you guys met in Atlanta, but Jackson State and Florida A&M have just as much of a history. You go back 1961, 1962, they both played in a couple of epic games. 1961, Florida A&M won the game. You're talking about such stalwarts, Bob Paramore, Bullet Bob Hayes. And then Jackson State comes back in 1962, and they win the Orange Blossom Classic, and they're crowned the HBCU national champions. But you have guys, and I was fortunate. I was very fortunate. I talked to on our podcast, we had the quarterback for the 1962 Jackson State team, Roy Curry, and he talks about his memories of that game in terms of there being 50 some odd thousand people in the stands. And it was the two best, HBCUs in the nation. And in a lot of ways, not just two best HBCUs, but probably two best teams in the nation. So you're talking about a team coached by Big John Merritt, who's a college football Hall of Fame. Of course, the great Jake Gaither from Florida A&M. So such a history going back. You take a look at Florida A&M's 1979 1AA national championship. Well, they defeated Jackson State on the way to become the first HBCU to actually claim that 1AA national championship. So just a tremendous history through the years. Looking forward to it again in terms of Florida A&M now coming to the SWAC, because these two schools, their history is almost unmatched by a lot of schools. I mean, when you talk about the stalwarts, the blue chips, if you will, in HBCU athletics, you're talking Florida A&M, Jackson State, Grambling, Southern, Tennessee State in a lot of ways. So just getting the opportunity to get back on the field again and to renew this rivalry, that's going to be huge for both institutions.
I do want to say, talking about the Orange Blossom Classic, I think the other part that's exciting, because people say some people just come for the bands. I disagree. I go for the game, but a lot of people do go for the band, and the camaraderie that's there, and the energy that, whether it's homecoming, whether it's a classic game, whatever it is, there's an energy, and it's like a big family reunion every time, and it's unmatched. I've been to Gator games. I've been to the national championship games. There is nothing like an HBCU homecoming. There is nothing like an HBCU classic. I would love to get you, as we're almost at our time, but I would love to get you all's like your favorite homecoming memory, or just the favorite thing about being a JSU alum and the games and that environment. The best thing that you can remember, particularly since we can't do it this year.
I don't know if I can give you my favorite homecoming memory because her husband might be watching. So. That's why we don't have Luke on the show. Let me back up on my favorite one and just say that again, those relationships formed over the years that sometimes, and you're exactly right, Monica, that a lot of folks do this for the band or do this for the games, but when it comes to homecoming, it's really not about either. It's about reconnecting with people, and some people you don't even know their name. You didn't know their name then, but when you see their face, you just light up and they light up and you do the, hey, my guy, yeah. Hadn't seen him in 15 or 20 years. And that's something that, you have other PWIs, and again, no shade, but they have to have, the Black Student Reunion Day in the spring, but this is something that is lifelong for us. It is rooted. And homecoming is that family reunion. It is that everybody comes back and you see people, and it is that benchmark of, I'm looking forward to a year from now. So it's a great time. It's a great time.
Listen, look, this is our time. This has been fun.
This is fun.
Truly fun.
So we're gonna try to have y'all back closer to the game next year. We can talk a lot of trash.
Anytime.
Absolutely. Well, listen, y'all be safe. Take care of yourselves, man. JSU. We're going to have the link to, if you want to get back to the JSU through the Alumni Association, we're going to actually have that link on our Facebook page as well. Get back to your school. Charles, Neely, we appreciate y'all.
Thank y'all. Y'all be blessed. Have a great Saturday.
Thank you.
Tune in at 12:30, y'all. Tune in at 12:30.
Take care.